doing a book review today. Empire of Silence by Christopher Ruocchio, book 1 in the Sun Eater series. Booktube was right, y'all. This is as good as they say it is. I resisted for so long. I'm like, I'm not reading that. I am not going to be a sheep that just follows along. Like any new thing that someone comes out with, I'm going to drop all my reading plans and pick it up. And then my patron Felipe told me it was a little bit like Name of the Wind, but set in space. And I'm like, oh, okay, I could feel my resolve cracking a little bit. And then so many positive reviews for it. So many people saying, hey, I think you specifically would really enjoy this book based on the other things you've liked. And so I finally gave in. I cracked. And you know what? I should have cracked sooner because I freaking loved this book. There's not a single thing about it I didn't enjoy. And I can't say that about a lot of books, but it was good enough to turn off all of that critical analysis that I do every time I read something. And I just enjoyed it. And I didn't even like look at it as for, I think this is something that other people might not like, but I'm enjoying. I didn't even go that far. The only criticisms I have for it that I thought of are ones that I picked up from listening to other people talk about it who didn't like it. Like, this really was one of those magical reads for me. And ever since I became a reviewer back in 2012, like, I don't get those experiences very often. And here's the thing, that praising review is of just this first book, and I hear it gets better. The book was such a cool hodgepodge of fantasy and sci-fi elements. It read very much like a chronicling fantasy story like Name of the Wind, but on a sci-fi scale and a sci-fi setting, kind of like the Red Rising. Like if Red Rising had been told immediately from the golden cast as opposed to the red cast, I think that would have been very similar to this. It's got so many feels of that like holier than thou type of thing. And the world building, for me, my favorite element of most books that I read, is very reminiscent of some of the stuff Sanderson was doing in the Stormlight Archive. Like, I love it when authors build things from the ground up, and everything from the different human societies to the flora and fauna to the alien races and their cultures. I love it when all of that stuff is just unique to the universe that we're in. I love really good creature creation, and the villains in this book were especially good. I love the fact that they're still enigmas, and I want to learn more about them. I want to learn more about this world. I want more of the politics. I want more of everything. And I also really love the characters. They all had really good profiles to them, and I especially like the main character. He's one of those characters who gets in his own way a little bit, and he kind of reminds me of the Mandalorian, a character that gets like the crap kicked out of him on occasion and has to figure out how to pull himself back up using his own wit and resources. And if he can just get out of his own way long enough, he might actually do great things. Like, that's how I feel about this character. I think he's a really interesting profile. The criticism that I heard another booktuber use is that he's a melodramatic, but see, that's the thing. The author hangs a lantern on it. He has other characters mention how melodramatic he's being. He has the character himself recognize when it's happening. And for me, that makes it all work. And the character isn't annoying on accident. No, that's like his profile. And so the growth arcs that usually come along with characters like that are very satisfying for me. I'm in it. I can't wait. And I especially like all of the characters he's surrounding himself with and the politics going on. To boot, all of it was written incredibly well. I do like the chronicling aspect, kind of like Quoth in Name of the Wind, and a very lyrical writing style. Not as flowery as Rothfuss, I say, but he has some really beautiful imagery in there. Like, something as simple as like describing the fingers of the wind grabbing a cloak, like very imagery driven, but very subtle. Like, it didn't overwhelm the text. And in fact, I had to pay attention to see it in most cases. But yeah, I just really enjoyed the writing style. The writing was lyrical without being too heavy-handed. The pacing was on point. The characters were engaging and clever. The world building was so creative and fun. The villains were bomb, and I'm so excited for the rest of the series that I can hardly stand it. 5 stars. And basically, if you have any desire to read it and you haven't yet hopped on the hype train, like, do it. Let's talk about other books you might like. Now, the biggest compliment that I can pay to this series is by comparing it to all of these really heavy hitter all-time favorite series. It was that good. It was on par with them, and it took elements from all of them without repeating it and with adding its own twist. I think it deserves to be among this lineup, for me anyway. So as I mentioned, Red Rising, the caste systems, very similar feel to the elite members of the society, how much power they wield and how much politics. I mean, they've even got extended life and whatnot. So if you liked Red Rising, especially Golden Sun and Morning Star, I think you will also really like Empire of Silence. As mentioned, Name of the Wind, very chronicling, lyrically beautiful, whereas this one has more of an academic setting. I'd say Empire of Silence is more of a competition setting, if you will. But yeah, very similar writing tones, and I think if you like the vibes of one, you'll like the vibes of the other. Way of Kings! It's heavy. The world building in Way of Kings, to me, is like the pinnacle of fantasy writing, and I think it spawned a whole generation of new styles of writing in the genre. I absolutely love this specific book, but the whole series, and world building to me is always the most dazzling thing an author can do, and elements of Ruocchio's reminded me of Way of Kings, and I don't find that comparison very often, so take that with some weight. Fun factor, Will of the Many and wild creativity. The Will of the Many had a ton of dynamics and just the most amazing competitions I've seen in books in recent years. And Christopher Ruocchio, the reason I'm comparing the two is character profile, and the main characters need to rely on their own wit to make things happen within the story, and a little bit of the politicking as well. Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. The through line between the two series is not a strong one, but for me, the excitement I felt while reading it, especially the second book of Richard Swan's story, the overall moodiness of the thing, the companionship aspect. Like, I think if you liked the characters in that one, you will appreciate the characters in this one, especially if you keep in mind that the characters do grow throughout the series, and so, like, they are in their own way, but then they kind of grow out of that. I love that kind of story arc. That wraps it up. I want to take a minute to thank my patrons. Thank you so much for everything you do to support me. I really appreciate it. It's because of you I feel so motivated to amp up my content creation game, and I've been having a lot of fun with it lately, so thank you. And thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.